How did the world's most notorious gangster really live? Behind his locked gates and closed doors, there's a side of Scarface Al Capone you've never seen before.
Come on, it's like...
It's dark and ugly, outrageously extravagant, and surprisingly normal. Inside the private spaces and strange places that Al Capone called home. Now, on Home and Bunker. A quiet neighborhood on Chicago's South Side. The last place you'd think to look for the world's greatest gangster. Think again.
7244 South Prairie Avenue. This is where Al Capone used to live.
For crime buffs like Mario, this house is a must-see stop on the Capone pilgrimage. Al Capone bought it in 1923 for $5,500 and put the deed in the names of his mother Teresa and wife May for safekeeping. 24 years old, Al was a rising star in Johnny Torrio's gang. Capone managed the Four Deuces, a popular Chicago brothel, saloon, and gambling joint. He was pulling down 25 grand a year. His new middle-class neighborhood was miles from the sleazy downtown action. The Capones were the first Italians on the block, which included 3 policemen, a minister, and a druggist. But they weren't your typical neighbors. The Capone place was a well-disguised fortress.
You had it specially reinforced with 1-foot cement to make it bulletproof.
He also embedded iron bars in the basement windows. They protected against the drive-by bomb toss, a staple of gang warfare at the time.
Yeah, that's really solid. That's really old stuff.
Like hundreds of other die-hard fans, we just had to knock on the door to get a look inside.
Hello, my name is Mario. Thank you for letting us into your home. How you doing? So this is the inside, eh?
The tenants take the parade of visitors in stride.
Yeah, a lot, they come to the door with their gangster hats and coats on. And most of them are from Kansas. That's why I say I don't know why, but maybe it's a big following down there, but you know.
Take a walk on hallowed ground.
This looks like, to me, it's the original flooring from when the Capones were walking here. It looks kind of narrow and small, but I guess to them in those days, this was pretty spacious.
The ground floor apartment housed Al, his wife May, their young boy Sonny, and Al's mother. His brothers and sisters lived upstairs. As his income grew, Al spiffed up the modest digs with some extravagant additions.
This bathroom may have been remodeled.
The bathroom once sported a massive 7-foot tub and expensive tiles imported from Germany. With the start of Prohibition in 1920, Capone began earning big money selling bootleg alcohol. His bloody and ruthless fight to the top of organized crime made him a notorious public figure.
So this is the kitchen?
To soften his image, Al trotted out his cozy domestic life.
There used to be a big cast iron stove here. Al made the spaghetti here for the famous interview with Time magazine.
For his debut appearance on the cover in 1930, Capone conducted the interview in a pink apron.
That must have been a laugh to see Al in a pink apron in front of a stove. Mr. Big Gangster.
The family home was a useful PR tool. But Al's real loves were his cars. Out back in the alley, he built the neighborhood's first 2-car garage to house his Hot Wheels. In 1925, a Chevy Coupe cost $600. Al was tooling around in a $10,000 Packard limo. When rivals shot up one of his cars, Al traded it in for something with a better safety record. The original Pimpmobile, a customized Cadillac. Armored with steel plates, it weighed 7 tons. The windows were bulletproof glass. The 16-cylinder engine had a top speed of 120 miles per hour. It even had its own police siren to cut through traffic. The price tag for this high-tech ride, $20,000. 200 grand in today's dollars.
When he passed by in his Cadillac, it was like a big circus in Chicago. Everybody had their, hey, there goes Al in his Cadillac. Everybody wanted to look.
Police often staked out Capone's house, hoping to arrest him on trumped-up vagrancy charges. But Al was elusive. Legend has it, he had a secret escape route. Tunnels leading from the basement to the garage.
So this has been definitely remodeled since.
Yeah. That's the original brick.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. That's for sure. Oh yeah.
You know that.
Oh yeah. It looks like cement is poured on top,
On
or
top
painted
of it,
on top of
yeah.
the bricks.
Very strange.
A few of Al's decorating touches still remain.
Okay. Yeah. Original green.
Yeah.
Keep a paint chip of that as a souvenir. Okay, Jason. Thanks a lot.
If there ever were tunnels down here, they've stayed well hidden.
The people living here before this, they probably covered it up. But I know the tunnels was probably still there.
Sure. Oh yeah. Yeah. Any evidence would be gone by now.
If I was to say, I would think it would be somewhere around here. I don't know why, but if I made one, it would be around here.
Jason has yet to start digging. When Al snuck out the back way, he wasn't just eluding the law. He was escaping domestic life, too.
He was living like a double life, you know, family man when he'd go to the South Prairie home and be nice to his mother. And yet he'd taste all kinds of prostitutes and the lavish lifestyles of getting drunk and partying.
Al kept a Playboy pad 16 miles west, in the Chicago suburb of Cicero, a working-class city of 60,000. The unassuming building offered lots of privacy. And you couldn't beat the location. Right down the street from his headquarters and near more than 150 saloons and gambling joints he owned in town. He bought the Austin Road building through a middleman, ensuring that ownership could never be tracked to him. If you got past the bodyguards at the front door, you could head on upstairs.
Hi, welcome to Al Capone's party apartment.
By 1925, Capone was a multi-millionaire and needed lots of room to fit his supersized life.
Come on into the living room.
Capone knocked down walls and transformed one entire floor into the perfect party space.
The ambiance is what we liked. Like, this is so wide open and spacious. I just had to have this place.
A flashy dresser, Capone needed a huge walk-in closet to fit his wardrobe.
This goes all the way through to the kitchen.
Al was a big spender. He thought nothing, buying 100 suits at a time, fine Italian silk underwear, diamond-studded belt buckles for all his friends, parties with meat bills costing $50,000 just for barbecues.
Capone hosted all-night parties here for his gangster pals, spending thousands on booze and live music. In the bedroom, Al whipped up a romantic mood. He installed floor-to-ceiling mirrors, lit from behind, in all the corners and behind the bed. This hall of mirrors was Al's real funhouse. Capone entertained a long line of young girlfriends here after office hours. But all that funny business had its price. While in his 20s, Al contracted syphilis that would later ravage his brain. Capone's party-hardy lifestyle went far beyond the privacy of his Cicero pad. Coming up, Capone paints the town red at his favorite nightclub and plots the bloodiest day in the history of organized crime. Nighttime in Chicago was Al Capone's time to mix business with pleasure. There was lots of action in the swinging uptown neighborhood. One of his favorite haunts was the Green Mill, where he went each week to catch the live music. Opened in 1910, it's America's oldest continuously operating jazz club.
You want to come behind the bar and see some stuff? Right here is Harold's big butt. Hey, Harold, go get out of the way, will you? I'm showing these guys some stuff. You know, we got full bar, liquor, wines. We used to have Schlitz for years, but they don't make it on tap anymore, which really got me going because it's like one of the greatest beers in the world.
By the 1980s, the place was a hard luck dive, but Dave saw a diamond in the rough.
And I walked in, and it was just fabulous. I mean, it was a dump, and they had to walk over drunk people that are passed out on the floor. The bartenders sold junkie spoons for $5 so they could shoot up heroin in the bathroom. It was wonderful.
Dave bought the place for a song. Under layers of grime, he uncovered murals painted on the walls. He rebuilt the massive bar and reupholstered the booths. The 1934 cash register still works like a charm. Dave restored the Green Mill to the glory of its Capone years. A nightclub that serves up stiff drinks and good jazz. In the 1920s, the joint was hopping every night. To get past the bouncers, you had to be dressed to the nines and pay $1 cover. As many as 300 people packed the ballroom to dance the night away to live bands. Imported Canadian whiskey and gin, served discreetly in coffee cups, cost 75 cents a shot. Beer from one of Capone's 8 local breweries went for 50 cents a pint. Capone didn't own the Green Mill, but his top lieutenant, machine gun Jack McGurn, did.
Jack McGurn was a trigger man for Al Capone. He protected his boss. He followed him at all the ball games and all that, and he was a very top-notch killer.
Jack's specialty was killing the hitmen hired by rivals to assassinate Capone. McGurn notched more than 25 kills. His signature was a nickel left behind in the victim's hand. With the money he made working for Capone, McGurn bought the Green Mill in 1927. Al supplied the club with booze and protection. Capone was approaching the top of his game. He had an army of 700 men. He supplied more than 6,000 Chicago saloons and speakeasies with bootleg booze. Just 28 years old, Al's income skyrocketed. At the Green Mill, the boss's well-being was always high priority. A special booth was kept standing by.
This is the booth that Al Capone would sit in when he came in, so he could see both doors. Mobsters usually don't like to have their backs to the doors because they want to see who's coming in case someone wants to whack them. We don't make a big deal out of it, but when people want to know where Al Capone sat, there it is, you know.
When Al Capone walked in, everyone took notice. The band stopped what it was playing and struck up his favorite song, Rhapsody in Blue.
And when he would come into the Green Mill, if you were already in this club, you wouldn't leave till Al left. This was a measure of precaution to make sure that no assassination attempt was made against Al Capone. Nobody was going in, nobody was going out. But the good thing was that Al always supplied you with booze all night, free of charge, if you stayed in the club.
Capone also took care of the waiters and musicians. He loved to tip big.
In those days, like $5 was a big deal, and he used to like to give them out like candy.
One of Al's favorite singers was Joe E. Lewis.
Jack McGurn hired him to play at the Green Mill. His contract was expiring, so Joey Lewis decided to leave.
Jack McGurn warned him this would not be a good career move. Lewis left anyway, so McGurn taught him a lesson.
He goes and gets Joey Lewis at his hotel, the Commonwealth Hotel at Pine Grove in Diversey, cuts off part of his tongue, slashes vocal cords, left him there to die, and the guy don't die.
Capone gave Joe $10,000 to help him get back on his feet, but his voice was never the same again. Like most things Capone, there is more to the Green Mill than meets the eye.
Well, this is how you get down to the basement. There's a trap door behind the bar. It's right down here.
When Al and his friends really wanted to have a good time, this is where they headed. Below the Green Mill were rooms reserved for special private parties.
Use your imagination. What could have been going on? Bathroom.
The boys could also take care of business if they needed to.
The urinals are pretty cool because look how big they are. It's like they must have had really big guys coming in here. And here's some blood from when a guy got his brains blew out. But actually, it was just a movie. They filmed a movie, Excessive Force down here. They didn't really kill the guy. It was fake. So come on this way. Let me get this open. A fancy security system. I hope no thieves are watching this.
An extensive tunnel system runs under the Green Mill, with passages leading in all directions.
There's a light there. Come on this way. Come on, watch your head. I don't want to get sued. Come on this way. Now we're going under the street, and these things kept going and going and going. Here's another trap door that goes out onto the street. If they got raided or something, they could always go through the tunnels and go out on the street, and then no one ever gets caught. And there's other ways of getting out, too.
This was the gangster version of an emergency exit. Capone could never be caught with his back against the wall. But that was exactly the fate he was plotting for his enemies. When arch-rival Bugs Moran and his North Side gang horned in on Capone's bootlegging operation, Al struck back. He gave Green Mill owner Jack McGurn the job of eliminating the problem. Trigger-happy Jack ambushed the North Side gang on February 14th, 1929, killing 7. The St. Valentine's Day Massacre was very bad press for Big Al. Even the Green Mill's cavernous tunnels couldn't hide Capone from the wrath of Moran and other rival mobsters. A marked man, Al went looking for a place to lie low until things cooled down. When we return, Capone finds safe haven in the most unlikely of places, a Pennsylvania prison cell. When Al Capone needed to get away from it all in 1929, this is where he checked in. America's most exclusive and oldest gated community.
We are in the front of Eastern State Penitentiary. At its only entrance into or out of the prison complex. There's an implied physical threat to the front of the building that says, if you commit a crime and you get sent inside of this dungeon, you'll be treated the way you would expect to be treated in a medieval castle. Dungeons and torture chambers and all those things.
But these imposing walls looked very inviting to Al Capone. In Chicago, his men had botched the St. Valentine's Day Massacre. Afraid of retaliation, Al managed to find an unusual safe haven in Philadelphia. He and his bodyguard were arrested for carrying concealed weapons. And in just 24 hours, Capone had been convicted and sent packing to his new prison pad.
There was a fix in so that Capone could be put away somewhere for a short period of time to let things cool down in Chicago without having to look like he's a coward and look like he's running and hiding.
Eastern State served Al's immediate need: not getting whacked. A stone wall, 6 feet thick and 30 feet high, stretched half a mile around the 11-acre compound. Guard towers at the 4 corners provided perimeter security 24/7.
So I'll walk you back into the center of the building, which is the surveillance point for the entire prison.
A unique design made it easy to keep an eye on all the prisoners.
If you went to a prison today, you might expect to see a guard looking at a whole wall of video monitors. But with this floor plan, one guard could stand in the center and look down and see all 7 cell blocks.
Hoping to score some preferential treatment, Al went to work on the warden, Herbert Smith. On the surface, Smith was no soft touch.
We ran the prison like a military compound. The inmates were allowed very few rights, very few creature comforts inside of their cells, and he ruled with a very hard fist. If your name wasn't Al Capone, he would have been a pretty tough man to live under.
Al managed to charm his way into the prison's nicest accommodations.
Cell block 8 beyond is, of course, where most of the inmates would be living, so come on over. And here was Capone on what they used to call Park Avenue. They always reserved this space for the inmates who they considered their pet inmates.
Gated off from the rest of the cells, this was the pen's most exclusive address. Park Avenue had 2 double-sized cells, one for Al, one for his bodyguard.
So here we are. This is Capone's cell. It's a relatively large cell. It's got 2 skylights.
Al was even allowed to furnish the place himself. Oriental carpets, just the thing to take the chill off those cold concrete floors. Fine oil paintings hung on the wall. Other inmates got a bare light bulb. Al scored some floor and desk lamps to give his place a warm, homey glow. Instead of the regulation footstool, Capone had a comfy armchair to curl up in. He also squeezed in a desk where he could keep up with paperwork and correspondence. His prized possession? A high-end radio console that cost $500. But no amount of interior decorating could hide the harsh reality of life behind bars. Outside Capone's Park Avenue digs, Eastern State Pen was a crowded small city. 1,700 inmates were crammed into a space designed for 260. There were barbershops, a full-service laundromat. There were workshops owned and operated by the inmates. A bakery turned out hundreds of loaves of bread a day. The dining choices were limited, but scoring a table was never a problem. For all those aches and pains that come with life behind bars, a medical center.
This is cell block 3. They turned the entire cell block into a hospital block. The pharmacy, psychiatric department here. The very creepy room 666. This is the operating room. Come on in.
Capone was brought here for surgery when his tonsils acted up.
One of the prison's board of trustees, Dr. Goddard, personally came in and took out Capone's tonsils. I like to think they were probably pretty nervous that day, trying to keep track of this very, very famous inmate as he was under general anesthesia.
After a few days in the recovery ward, Al was back in circulation. Wherever he went in the prison, Capone added a healthy dose of glamour to the drab surroundings.
He's a real celebrity in this city, and he spends his money freely. He spent thousands of dollars buying inmate handicrafts, which he sent home to friends as Christmas presents. So he bought lots of goodwill.
The prison in Philadelphia went all starry-eyed for the big guy.
If you read the newspapers from the year that Capone was here, It's just one article after another. And the prison must have itself been using him for PR for themselves. And, we're falling all over themselves trying to protect this guy.
Capone's special treatment went far beyond his cushy cell.
And then around the corner, the assistant warden's office was right over here.
It was just a short walk from Al's cell to his temporary office. The assistant warden's phone was at his disposal.
In 1929, inmates don't use phones, period. Today they can, but back then they couldn't. Capone was able to, and consequently was allowed to run his mob.
And with unlimited visiting privileges, Capone could host business meetings with his cronies. In March 1930, after 10 months behind bars, it was moving day again.
The exact hour of Capone's release was public information, and so everybody knew that one afternoon that door was going to swing open and out was going to walk Al Capone. And so there were rumors that there would be an assassination attempt.
On the big day, the Caponerazzi were out in force. Hundreds of fans lined the street, but Capone did not show.
Finally, Herbert Smith, the warden, walked out, and he said, "Boys, I stuck one in your eye." We transferred Capone in secret, and he was released on schedule. They had essentially helped him escape from prison.
By the time the ruse was announced, Al was halfway to Chicago. Capone's sojourn at Eastern State Penitentiary was a success. He had dodged a bullet and kept his business running uninterrupted. The prison closed its doors in 1970 after 140 years in business. It's now a historic site open to the public. Coming up next, Capone trades in life in the Windy City for fun in the sun at his Miami Beach mansion. Miami Beach, Florida, year-round playground of the rich and famous. It's home to stars such as Shaquille O'Neal and Sean P. Diddy Combs. But it was Al Capone who kicked off the celebrity home buying spree back in 1928 when he bought an estate on exclusive Palm Island. Welcome to Capone's Place in the Sun. A Mediterranean revival mansion. Al Capone purchased this waterfront property for $40,000, paid in cash, of course.
I'm Hank Morrison, and this is the old Al Capone house. I bought it back in 1970.
Hank fell in love with all the Spanish details. Although he didn't find out it belonged to Al Capone until after buying it, Hank quickly got into the gangster spirit.
I had to pretty much do a renovation on the house, and I was hoping that I'd find maybe some big $100 bills, but no such luck.
Capone was one of the wealthiest men in the nation. In 1927, his Chicago syndicate grossed over $100 million from bootlegging, gambling, and prostitution. Al had grabbed power by waging a bloody war on rival gangs, killing more than 300. He was looking to distance himself from the violence and enjoy his hard-earned riches. When business brought him to Florida, he found the perfect opportunity.
Well, Capone came down here initially to oversee the importation of illicit alcohol for his alcohol empire. And the islands of the Bahamas, especially Bimini, were rich sources for it. And then he just fell in love with the area, reminded him, in his words, of the sunny shores of Italy.
It was the ideal getaway for the ultimate nouveau riche. Even the land was brand new. From 1919 to 1921, steam-powered pipeline dredges scooped up the bay bottom to create Palm Island's 65 acres. Built on top of this fill, Capone's house was just 6 years old when he moved in. But Al had big plans for a major home makeover. Top on the to-do list, security. In Chicago, Scarface had barely escaped numerous attempts on his life. His many enemies would stop at nothing to see him dead. So Al took no chances. He built a 2-foot-thick wall around the Miami property. At the front entrance, a 2-story gatehouse and garage housed his many bodyguards. Thick oak and iron gates kept potential assassins from barging in. Searchlights scanned the shores for intruders approaching from the water. A contingent of armed guards patrolled the perimeter around the clock. Al spent $1 million in today's dollars on additions and renovations and moved in with his wife May and their 12-year-old boy Sonny. Inside the house were 15 spacious rooms. The upstairs boasted 3 full baths and 4 bedrooms.
This was the master bedroom that he and his wife enjoyed so much.
Al's bedroom doubled as a bank vault. He kept a chest filled with cash at the foot of the bed for everyday expenses. The 7 rooms downstairs were built for the steamy Florida summers.
The whole intent of the design of this house is to open it up to the sunlight and especially the breezes, which made this very comfortable for Capone and his family.
The large rooms were perfect for the non-stop house party of gangsters that visited from Chicago. In 1929, Al threw a blowout party on the eve of a boxing match in Miami Beach between heavyweights Jack Sharkey and young Stribling. Al promised tickets to all his pals, but he stiffed one associate, a local pilot named Eddie Niermeyer. So Eddie sent Al a friendly reminder during the party.
Niermeyer had what he called some firecracker or firework bombs. He's flying this light plane over the estate here, and he drops these firecracker bombs, and they exploded in midair. Bodyguards, everybody else came out of the house with their pistols drawn to see what was going on. Niermeyer also dropped a note at that time, and the note said, "I'm waiting for my 2 tickets." Well, he landed his plane nearby, and by the time he landed his plane, Capone's chauffeur was there with 2 tickets to the fight that night.
It was the only time the well-defended compound was ever attacked. On the grounds of the estate, Al created his own personal Shangri-La. Stonemasons built an elaborate rock grotto inlaid with coral. Capone put in the largest private swimming pool in Florida. Lined with marble, the pool featured a high-tech filter system that circulated 80,000 gallons of water from the bay.
It's actually about 4 times as big as your average swimming pool. And being so big, it takes a tremendous amount of chemicals just to keep it going.
Al also built a grand cabana with his and hers changing rooms. Thrill seekers headed for the 2nd floor balcony.
In that middle portion, there was a diving board. Well, you can imagine diving off of that thing and hitting the sidewalk. I don't think Capone was too worried about lawsuits. If you fell off the diving board and hit the concrete, that was your tough luck. You know, watch it coming down here now. Out here, Capone had a big boathouse, and he had a nice yacht.
His prize vessel was a 36-foot Robinson Seagull. The cabin cruiser was decked in mahogany and slept 4. Al loved taking his criminal friends out on fishing trips. Rumor has it, he also used the boat for trips to the Bahamas, a major source of his rum-running operations located just 65 miles off his dock. Equipped with a 300-horsepower inboard engine, the Seagull could outrun all but the fastest Coast Guard vessels. All this conspicuous consumption attracted lots of unwelcome attention. The authorities raided the mansion twice, looking for the money trail behind his lavish lifestyle. Even illegal income was subject to taxes, and Al hadn't paid up in years. In November 1931, Capone was convicted of income tax evasion and sentenced to 11 years behind bars. May Capone sold the Miami Beach estate fully furnished in 1952. The selling price was just $50,000, a fraction of what Al had spent on it. Coming up next, Al Capone fights for survival at San Francisco's most feared address, Alcatraz Island. In 1934, Al Capone's new home was the most notorious piece of real estate in San Francisco, Alcatraz Island. 2 decades earlier, the U.S. military had chosen the Rock to build a fully enclosed prison that could house 600 inmates. Located 1.5 miles from shore, the superstructure was the world's largest concrete building of its kind. The prison was surrounded by high cliffs, frigid water, and dangerous currents. It was deemed escape-proof. In 1933, the Justice Department took over Alcatraz and spent millions to convert it into a maximum security super prison, reserved for the hardest criminal cases. Convicted of income tax evasion, Al Capone was one of the first prisoners to arrive here at the docks of the new federal pen. He was joined by an all-star cast for the premiere of the real-world Alcatraz. Al's new housemates included some of the biggest names in crime: Machine Gun Kelly, Alvin Creepy Karpis, and gang leader Doc Barker. Warden James Johnston went right to work, dismantling Capone's lifestyle and identity.
When Al Capone first arrived here at Alcatraz, Warden Johnston was here to welcome the new fish, as they were called. He asked him for his name, and Al Capone was surprised. "You don't know who I am?" He goes, "I don't care who you are. You're just another prisoner here." He was called AZ-85, just a number.
AZ-85's new home was a one-person cell located on the eastern side of the main cell house, along what inmates called Michigan Avenue.
So Al Capone was up on the 2nd floor, and he had a great view of the East Bay. He was the 4th cell down, cell number 181.
Capone's big world was reduced to a very small room. The interior decorating touches focused on security, not comfort.
The bars that you see here, these are case-hardened steel bars, tool-proof, very tough to cut your way through the bars. Either end of the cell block has a gun gallery where the officer would patrol, and he would back up the officer on the ground floor. They had a .45 and a .30-06 rifle.
An automated remote control lock system was installed to keep the inmates behind bars.
You can operate any door that you want. 14 cells could be opened from this one box.
This was the original Slammer. Talking with other inmates was prohibited. The isolation was severe.
Rack number 14, John.
If you weren't on a job working or in the mess hall eating, you was locked in these cells. The average guy, they were 16 to 18 hours a day in their cell on weekdays, 20 hours a day on the weekends.
Capone had to adjust to a strict daily regime. Each day started at 6:30 a.m. with a march to the mess hall.
This was one of the danger spots because all the inmates were in here at one time. A lot of ornery, mad, bitter individuals here. You had to really protect yourself at all times.
To quell any violence, 14 tear gas canisters were mounted on the ceiling and could be remotely activated. The inmates dubbed it the gas chamber. The food was the best in the federal prison system. There was pot roast with vegetables, fresh bread and butter, and pie for dessert. The cons were forced to eat everything on their plate. When Capone didn't finish his cake one day, his next meal was taken away. In the kitchen, security was tight. The knives were counted and kept under lock and key.
Whenever you went anywhere you moved in this institution, you went through a metal detector. And if a lot of times when you came out of the mess hall, they would have custodial officers here who would pat you down to see you weren't bringing any food out of the mess hall.
After breakfast, it was time for work. Al was assigned to the laundry at the far end of the island. Stripped of his money and bodyguards, Capone was on his own. Al's job was to feed the wet clothes into a wringer. He soon ran into trouble when his workmate began critiquing his technique.
He wasn't wringing it right, or so the other inmate was telling him. So he threw back the clothes in Al Capone's face and a fight broke out between them two.
The punishment for fighting was severe.
This staircase leads us down to solitary confinement.
The cell house was built directly on top of the old Army Citadel's barracks and storage rooms.
And this is what the cons referred to as the dungeon. This space was kind of the end of the line. If you were a convict that got into a fight like Al Capone, they would send you down into this basement.
Capone served a week in the dungeon, alone and in total darkness. When he emerged, Al was reassigned to work in the prison library, where he earned high marks for his job filling out library cards. Capone indulged his bookworm tendencies, devouring such classics as Practical Flower Gardening, Sailing Alone Around the World, and Life Begins at 40. In the library, Capone was relatively safe, but other places were downright dangerous.
This is the entrance to the shower room. They've taken the shower heads out, but the main pipe that run down through here with downspouts all the way down on both sides, they would bring about 40 men at a time.
In June 1936, Capone was here, mopping the floor when he was attacked from behind without warning. Jim Lucas, an inmate trying to extort money, viciously stabbed him with scissors taken from the barbershop. Bleeding and in shock, Capone was carried upstairs to the hospital, where he had surgery to remove the scissor tip embedded in his thumb. It took Capone a week to recover. Jim Lucas got 6 months in the dungeon. The stress was taking a toll on Al's health. Bullied and in fear, Capone began to lose his mind. In February 1938, Al broke down in front of the guards at breakfast.
And they noticed that he was disoriented and he was drooling at the side of his mouth. They sent him back to his cell and he was throwing up and sitting on the toilet seat right here.
Capone was rushed to the hospital. The diagnosis was syphilis, so advanced it was eating away at his brain. There was no cure for the disease in 1938, so Al agreed to get some experimental therapies. Doctors injected him with malaria to induce high fever and kill the syphilis. It didn't help. For the next year, Al was confined to the hospital wing. His condition grew worse. Skin sores broke out all over his body. He talked incoherently and paced incessantly. For months, Al was kept isolated in the bug cage, a special cell for the mentally unstable. Unable to care for him, prison officials voted Al Capone off the island. He was released in January 1939. The Rock continued to serve up its brutally effective punishment until 1963, when it was closed due to high maintenance costs. Alcatraz Island is now a national park. Cell number 181, Al's Place, is the most popular destination on the public tour. After leaving Alcatraz, Capone returned to his Miami villa. Broken in mind and spirit, his crime lord days were over. A very sick man, Capone seldom left the walled compound for the next 7 years. He died in this bedroom on January 25th, 1947, a week after turning 48. The cause was cardiac arrest. His body was brought back to Chicago for burial. At the modest funeral, only a few criminal bigwigs came to pay their last respects. The only lavish touch was $30,000 of orchids and gardenias that blanketed his custom oversized bronze coffin. Al Capone, the most notorious gangster of all time, had reached his final crib, Section 35 of the Mount Carmel Cemetery.